Joining me now is Mozambique's Graça Machel. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. Graça, it's so great to see you.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Graça, I want to talk about women, girls, and adolescents. They've been so hard hit during the pandemic around the world, and especially in Africa. Can you highlight for us what has happened?
Let me start with girls. About 20 million girls are at risk of not coming back to school. And you can imagine what it means losing an opportunity of becoming part of the 21st century for 20 million girls who are our children. Women, it has been said, most of them lost their livelihoods. But more than the material losses, women have lost their sense of dignity when they cannot earn a living, when they cannot provide for their families, when they become vulnerable to looking for food every day, they lose their jobs. And more grave even is to feel so vulnerable to this virus, to which until today, no one in my continent has an idea of when they can get a vaccine. When in the other parts of the globe, people are talking of millions who are being vaccinated and percentages which go over 80% of population which have been vaccinated. And on my continent, less than 2% of the almost a billion of Africans, they do not know when they can have a vaccine. So they are vulnerable to at any time, be infected and dying of this deadly, virus. And this is the environment where girls and women are living on my continent. I don't want you to believe that we are hopeless. Because I have to say, if our communities are still striving today, if our communities are still alive, this is due to African women in their families, in their relentless capacity of reinventing themselves, finding the impossible ways of putting food on the table of their families. And even though there's difficulties, where yes, they are going out there to have access to health, access to children going to school. All this is really responsibility of African women. It's not necessarily the state institutions, it's the women who are making it impossible for us to be somehow the society we are. So I'm talking of the challenges, but at the same time, I want to put women at the center of our recovery as a human family, and particularly the recovery of African societies and economies.
And how do we do that? How can the world recover the momentum that it's lost on so many of the issues that you care about simply because of the pandemic's impact and a vaccine nationalism that you eloquently talked about how it's impacted women, girls, adolescents, and the whole continent of Africa?
I would really appeal to our sense of identity as human beings, to recognize that every single human being counts and has to be valued. This means in our strategies of reconstructing after this horrible pandemic is to put human beings at the center of what we are doing. And I worry that sometimes we talk much more of economies and the numbers and the monies which are required, but not necessarily thinking of a child, an adolescent, and boy and girl, the young people, women, so that your strategies of recovery will be focusing on the specific needs of each social group I have just mentioned. It's not about numbers, it's about people. This is first. I think the other thing which worries me really is how do we come to a situation where when we were united to say this virus is a threat to all of us, once we have vaccines, then some leaders, they decided that their populations are more important than the rest of the population of the world. I just can't understand. I can't understand. And this comes back to the issue of it's not really, it's more than solidarity. It's an issue of seeing yourself with the eyes and the feelings of the other, and to feel that you are because someone else is. We talk of the Ubuntu. It's not too late to continue to talk about it. But really, we need to go back to the sense of belonging to the same human race, human family. And the rights to life are the rights of every single person. You are in Africa, you are in Latin America, you are in Asia, you are in Europe, you are in America. All of us, we have the same rights. And this nationalism, for me, is the worst demonstration of a failure in the values we always say we believe in. And we build our societies on the basis of equality. So I believe we need really to go back to the basics. We need to go back to the basics.
Well, if we need to go back to those basics and look at those important values that you articulated just now, what would be a final thought for the entire forum that you can leave us with that would be a thought on empowering future generations and what that looks like to you?
I believe we have to build a legacy for future generations, which is based on the values of equality, of equity, of respect for human dignity, of feeling and acting as the destiny of each one of us is deeply related and realizable if it's linked to the destiny of others. I think this is the ground in which young generation, in my view, should be nurtured. And I'm saying should be nurtured to grow knowing that they have to be closing the gap of inequality, closing the gap of poverty, closing the gap of these artificial, walls which we have built of those who are developed and not those who are not developed, and the right of certain people to achieve their potential and others not. I think future generations have to go back to the basics of all of us as human race, as a human family, working together on the basis of equality. Second, I believe that future generations have to be empowered with the tools of knowledge and science for all. Again, it's unacceptable that we'll have millions of young people not having access to education, or if they have access to a school, they complete primary school without knowing how to read and write and count. It's unacceptable in 21st century with the tools and the capacities we have not to be able to adequately educate our young people and for them to have the tools to realize themselves fully in their potential. It's an obligation. It's a mandatory for us to review the way we put our education systems at the service of young generations. I believe also it is unacceptable for us to leave a legacy in which we don't care for the future of the planet. This planet is not ours. It was lent to us, and we have to leave it to young generations to come. We need to confront the impact of the development options which we have made, which are destroying the planet. We don't have the right to leave a planet which is in disarray as it is, because it belongs to young generations. We have to be able to mend, the errors we have made, to respect what science is saying as how really to rejuvenate the planet and to offer to new generations in a healthy and prosperous situation.